Do you want to know what the best returning Pokemon are in Scarlet and Violet, but you don't have the time to compare them to all of the new Pokemon? Well, fear not. I am the greatest Pokemon player of all time, and I'm here to tell you which of your old favorites are going to make a splash in this generation. Coming in at number 10 is Dragapult. It's a dragon and ghost type that's exceptionally fast. One of Dragapult's biggest strengths is its flexibility. It can be a physical attacker, a special attacker, or even a support Pokemon. Dragapult normally uses the ability Clear Body, which prevents its stats from being lowered by an opponent. This is a pretty big deal, because Dragapult is normally a physical attacker, and physical attackers often fall victim to Intimidate, an ability that lowers, you guessed it, your physical attack. I don't want to say physical attack anymore. Between Clear Body making it immune to Intimidate and its ghost typing making it immune to normal and fighting type moves, Dragapult can be a huge pain to slow down. This is going to be our first time using Dragapult without Dynamax. Oh, it kind of just hit me that we're not going to have Dynamax again. Losing its Dynamax capability is partially the reason it isn't higher up on our list. One of Dragapult's biggest issues is that its only good physical ghost type attack is Phantom Force. Phantom Force is great in that it hits through Protect, but it's not so great in that it takes 2 turns to actually do any damage. Imagine you use Phantom Force in front of a Psychic type and you're like, okay, great, I'll knock this thing out. And then they just Terastallize into the Dark type and you're like, uh-oh. This wasn't that big a deal in Sword and Shield because number one, Terastallization didn't exist. And even if you were worried about, I don't know, like a Psychic type switching out into a Dark type, you could always use Max Phantasm and just hit the opponent like right away. Dragapult is still a great Pokemon, but this is a major hindrance. Dragapult doesn't make perfect use of Terastallization, but I think it still has some strong uses. Like most Dragon-type Pokemon, Terra Steel is an amazing option to turn Dragapult's weaknesses into resistances. If you Terastallize and use Dragon Dance in the same turn, you could potentially get a pretty big boost without taking that much damage. I could also see a more aggressive type, like Terra Ghost being used to take advantage of Dragapult's offenses. Terra Fire on a special set, perfectly fine as well. I'm really excited to see how good Dragapult is now that Dynamax is gone. Number 9 is Amoonguss. Introduced in Pokemon Black and White, Amoonguss has been a mainstay of competitive Pokemon ever since, even winning 2 of the World Championships. It's a phenomenal support Pokemon thanks to its access to 2 moves in particular, Spore and Rage Powder. We'll talk about those in a second. If you don't follow competitive Pokemon, you might be surprised to see Amoonguss this high. Unlike Dragapult, Amoonguss is pretty much never going to be doing damage, and its typing and stats leave a bit to be desired. The thing is, the role that Amoonguss fills actually has nothing to do with its offense, and its typing and stats, while not geared towards doing damage, make it one of the best support Pokemon out there. Amoonguss is a grass and poison type, which leaves it with 4 weaknesses. Nope. Oh yeah. Amoonguss is a grass and poison type, which leaves it with 4 weaknesses and 5 resistances. And while it doesn't have the highest defenses, it has a monstrous HP stat that allows it to stick around for a long time. And the reason that Amoonguss wants to stick around is because of those moves we mentioned earlier, Spore and Rage Powder. Spore is a simple enough move to understand. It puts the opponent to sleep. Sleep is a debilitating status condition, preventing an opponent from moving for 1 to 3 turns. It basically takes a Pokemon out of the fight. If you're not careful, Amoonguss can easily do this to your entire party. To balance how powerful Sleep is, most moves that can put a Pokemon to sleep have low accuracy, like Sleep Powder and Hypnosis. Spore, however, has 100% accuracy. So not only is Amoonguss a difficult to remove bulky Pokemon with good defensive typing, it can also put you to sleep? Okay, sure. I see why that could be pretty good. Wait, there's more? Yep. It also applies defensive pressure thanks to its move Rage Powder. Rage Powder redirects all opponent's attacks to the user, protecting Amoonguss's partner. If you're familiar with the move Follow Me, it's basically just that, except it doesn't work on grass Pokemon. This might not sound like that big a deal, but remember, Follow Me was a huge part of what allowed Pachirisu to win the World Championships, so definitely don't underestimate it. Amoonguss probably isn't the Pokemon you want to be Terastallizing most of the time, but if you ever do face off an Amoonguss who's Terastallized, it might be pretty terrifying. Amoonguss already doesn't have that many weaknesses. Imagine thinking you're about to KO it with a strong fire or ice type attack, and then it just Terastallizes into water and puts your counter to sleep. Yeah. Amoonguss is a super versatile Pokemon that I'm sure we'll be seeing a ton of in competitive play. Number 8 is the fan favorite Garchomp. Garchomp has amazing stats and great typing. I definitely expect it to make some waves in Paldea. Like Amoonguss, Garchomp has won 2 World Championships, though to be fair, these were a while ago. The thing is, I think that Garchomp is uniquely positioned to take advantage of a lot of this generation's peculiarities, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with why Garchomp is good in the first place. Ground and Dragon is very good defensive typing despite being quadruple weak to Ice. Its only two other weaknesses are Fairy and Dragon. It has resistances to Fire and Rock, plus an immunity to Electric, all of which are very common attacking types. Garchomp's stats help it out a ton. It has a great attack stat, it's faster than most other Pokemon, and it actually has really good bulk for such an offensive Pokemon. Garchomp will live strong neutral attacks without even training it to be defensive. And if you do want to make it extra bulky, you can probably even live some strong super effective attacks. While not quite as flexible as Dragapult, Garchomp still has a lot of freedom in its move, item, and ability choices. It'll normally run Protect, Earthquake, Dragon Claw, and then either Rock Slide or Swords Dance as the last slot. But moves like Substitute, Iron Head, and Poison Jab can all work depending on your Terra type. Garchomp is also a Pokemon that uses both offensive and defensive items quite well, allowing you to customize it based on what your team needs. Life Orb and Choice items are super solid choices if you're looking to up your offense. But Lumberry, Focus Sash, Habenberry, or the new item Clear Amulet are all good as well. Clear Amulet in particular really interests me because it can make Garchomp immune to Intimidate. As for the abilities, Sandveil is so broken, but it only works when Sandstorm is up. Rough Skin has a lower ceiling, but it's way more consistent. Garchomp has a couple good options for its Terra type. Terra Steel is probably the best because it turns all of Garchomp's weaknesses into resistances, but there is a case to be made for Terra Poison and Poison Jab to better handle grass types. Terra Ground also super fine and gives you more immediate damage. The idea of attacking Garchomp with a strong Ice type move, only to have it Terrastalize into Steel and set up a Swords Dance is very scary. I think Garchomp is going to be a major player this generation. Do you want to be a major player in Pokemon? Well, why aren't you subscribed? I'm putting out 4 videos a week to help you all learn everything you need to know about Pokemon. You might think you're already subscribed because you've been getting all my videos, but you actually might not be. On a serious note, I really do want to be the first competitive Pokemon channel ever to hit 1 million subscribers. I can't do it without you all, so I really appreciate any support. Anyway, let's talk about number 7. Number 7 is another dragon, but I promise it's the last one. Hydreigon. While Garchomp is normally considered a bit better than Hydreigon, I've ranked Hydreigon higher because I think it has more to gain from Terrastal. Oh man, I've got to stop getting ahead of myself. Anyway, Hydreigon is yet another Pokemon that has won 2 world championships, but to be fair, it won both of those before fairy types existed. Also, I just realized it beat the 2 times it won or when it knocked me out of top cut. Maybe I should rank Hydreigon lower. Its Dark and Dragon typing have a number of benefits, but its 4 times weakness to Fairy definitely holds it back. Hydreigon is a strong offensive powerhouse that is difficult to switch into because of how many types it hits for neutral damage. While Hydreigon isn't the fastest Pokemon, it outpaces a lot, and it's really good at dealing with Pokemon that are slower than it. It has access to a really wide move pool, including moves like Flamethrower, Hydro Pump, Earth Power, and even Tailwind if you're looking for a more supportive option. Its ability, Levitate, is very useful on its own, but becomes even more useful when we think about it in the context of Terrastalization. In my opinion, Hydreigon has 2 main choices here. Terra Steel is good because, again, you're a dragon, but you keep your fighting weakness. This is definitely a good option, but I think there's another one that we should consider. Terra Poison. This might sound weird because normally Poison isn't a very desirable type, but hear me out. Poison only has 2 weaknesses, to Ground and Psychic. Hydreigon is immune to Ground thanks to Levitate, and immune to Psychic before it Terrastalizes. Plus, it still keeps Stab on its Dark moves even after it Terrastalizes, so it can easily remove Psychic types. You'll now resist Fairy, Fighting, and Bug, all of which Hydreigon is weak to, but you won't have as many resistances as you would if you went Steel type. As a side note, because Hydreigon's move pool is just so deep already, you don't even have to worry about running a crappy Poison or Steel move here. I think of the Pokemon on our list thus far, Hydreigon has the most to gain from Terrastalization. I'm really excited to see how players use it. Right before the halfway point, number 6 is Grimmsnarl. Now, like Dragapult, Grimmsnarl was one of the single best Pokemon to come out of Generation 8. And we've never really used it outside of a Dynamax format. I will say, of the Pokemon on this list, Grimmsnarl's placement feels the most speculative, but it honestly has so much going for it that I feel confident that Grimmsnarl's gonna be a major player. Grimmsnarl is really a spoiled only child. Not only did they give it amazing defensive typing, not only did they give it the best supporting ability in the game, not only did they give it every move it could ever want and then some, but they also gave it an actually nutty attack stat so it can even do damage. And as if this weren't enough, it got the Incineroar treatment. By which I mean one of the single best Pokemon from the last generation was buffed going into this one. Whew, I'm getting a little flustered. Let's talk about what Grimmsnarl does. Thanks to its ability Prankster, any non-damaging move that Grimmsnarl uses will get priority, moving before most other Pokemon can move. In Sword and Shield, Grimmsnarl's primary role was to set up Reflect and Light Screen and then support its team with speed control options like Thunder Wave or Scary Face. The thing is, Grimmsnarl has so many amazing moves. Fake Out, Fake Tears, Taunt, Trick, not to mention its offensive moves like Spirit Break, Sucker Punch, Play Rough, or Foul Play. And despite it all, going into Generation 9, they gave Grimmsnarl Parting Shot, the move that took Incineroar from broken to Omega Turbo Ultra Broken. I honestly, I don't know what they were thinking, but I also don't think this is as big a deal as it was when Incineroar got it. You really want Parting Shot to move after your opponent so you can get a Pokemon in for free, and with Prankster, Grimmsnarl is going to be moving first. Grimmsnarl already wants to run more moves than it can fit, so I'm not sure how valuable this is at the end of the day. Even if it doesn't end up making a difference, it definitely didn't need the option in the first place. Between you and me, I don't think Grimmsnarl makes especially good use of Terrestrialization. Unlike Amoonguss, buying Grimmsnarl one extra turn just doesn't have that much value most of the time. Plus, Grimmsnarl already will often run Reflect and Light Screen to help it stay alive. I'm sure we will see 1 or 2 Terra Grimmsnarl, but I don't expect it to be very common. Number 5 goes to a classic Pokemon, Gyarados. The only time Gyarados won the World Championships was when Seijun used it with its Mega Form. But between you and me, this year I think Gyarados has a real shot at the big time. Let's talk about what makes Gyarados strong. First, its ability. Gyarados has arguably the best commonplace ability in the game, Intimidate. Intimidate lowers both opponents' physical attack stats every time the user hits the field. Gyarados also has good stats. While they aren't broken by any means, its attack stat gives a good field presence, and it's bulky enough, especially when you factor in Intimidate. It isn't the fastest Pokemon, but Gyarados almost always runs Dragon Dance, which boosts its speed to actually really fast levels. Gyarados has 2 major weaknesses. First, its typing, while good in general, leaves it with a quadruple weakness to Electric. Second, despite being a flying type, Gyarados doesn't learn any good physical flying type attacks. Unless you want to run Terra Blast, which I don't really recommend on Gyarados, flying type attacks are off the table, but something else is in. Gyarados' only 2 weaknesses are Electric and Rock. By changing into a ground type, Gyarados can resist Rock and become immune to Electric. Buying a free turn with this defensive reversal can allow Gyarados to set up a Dragon Dance, poising itself for a sweep. On top of this, most Gyarados already run Earthquake, the most commonplace ground attack in the game. So not only does Terra Ground turn your worst matchup into an immunity, it also gives you a damage boost on a move you were already running. It isn't even necessary for Gyarados to Terrestrialize every single game because it's just a good Pokemon normally. Like Garchomp, Gyarados really loves the new Clear Amulet item, making it impossible to lower its attack and speed, which is especially threatening after a Dragon Dance. Terra Ground Gyarados does, of course, still have some weaknesses, mainly grass types who resist both water and ground, but I still expect it to be a standout Pokemon this generation. You knew it had to be here somewhere. Number 4 goes to Tyranitar. One of the all-time best Pokemon, Tyranitar's return to Paldea will define the metagame. Let's talk about why. Tyranitar has the ability Sandstream, which sets up a sandstorm for 5 turns. Weather is really influential in competitive Pokemon, and having a Pokemon as good as Tyranitar to set it up is a pretty big deal. There were literally years where players were forced to use Pelipper just to set up the rain, and yeah, Tyranitar is a bit better of a Pokemon compared to Pelipper. Sand is nice because it synergizes with ground and steel types, and because it gives rock types like Tyranitar a special defense boost. This is effectively just a ton of free stats on top of Tyranitar's already impressive stat spread. For free! Actually, yeah, let's just talk about the stats. Of all the Pokemon on this list, Tyranitar has the best stats, plain and simple. This spread is truly absurd. Ridiculous HP and defenses, a monstrous attack stat, even a special attack stat is good. The only middling stat is its speed, which it can boost with Dragon Dance or even Rock Polish. On top of its stats, Tyranitar has one of the deepest move pools in the game, learning a wide array of physical, special, and support moves. It also has supreme flexibility with its item. Weakness Policy, Lumberry, Life Orb, Choice Band, Choice Scarf, Assault Vest, Clear Amulet. These are all viable options. Despite all of this, Tyranitar has only won the World Championships one time. And the reason is because of its typing. When I made my list of the 10 worst type combinations in the game, and when I ranked every single type combination, I put Tyranitar's typing of Dark and Rock at number 10 out of like 153. Tyranitar is so good despite its typing, not because of it. And thanks to terrestrialization, Tyranitar can finally shed its abysmal typing for something better. Most people will probably run Terra Ghost Tyranitar to turn its 4 times weakness into fighting into an immunity. I personally think there's a case for Terra Rock as well. You only give up some of your weaknesses, but in exchange, you get a power boost on your rock type attacks, and you don't lose your special defense boost from the Sandstorm. I think Terra Fairy also has some use here since you resist both fighting and bug. Terra Fairy also gives you a dark resistance, which I know doesn't sound that useful on Tyranitar, but hear me out. If your opponent is threatening a fighting type attack and knows that your Tyranitar is likely to turn into Terra Ghost, they could use both a fighting and a dark type attack in the same turn to KO your Tyranitar regardless of whether or not you turn into Terra Ghost. Terra Fairy gets you around that use case, but again, I don't know how common this is going to be. Regardless of your Terra type, anything reasonable you choose is likely going to make your Tyranitar much stronger. I expect it to be one of the best Pokemon this generation. We're into the top 3 now. Our third slot goes to another weather setter, Torkoal. If you haven't played Pokemon in a while, you might be surprised to see Torkoal this high, but I promise you, this is the furthest thing from a joke. Torkoal is a pure fire type that is used primarily for its access to the ability Drought. Drought sets up the strong sunlight for 5 turns, weakening water attacks and powering up fire ones. The thing is, this alone wouldn't be enough to earn Torkoal this high of a placement, especially when we look at the stats. Torkoal is one of the slowest Pokemon of all time, coming in with a whopping 20 base speed, significantly slower than even Amoonguss. Its HP and special defense aren't anything to write home about, and its special attack isn't anything special. Well, it is special, but you know what I mean. Torkoal has a monstrous defense stat going for it, but that's kinda it. So why is Torkoal this high? The answer lies in its move pool and ability. Torkoal gets access to Eruption, one of the strongest attacks in the game. It's the same base power as Hyper Beam, and it hits both of your opponents. And that's not all. Being a fire type attack, it gets even stronger in the sun. Torkoal was extremely popular at the beginning of Sword and Shield. Players used its low speed stat with Trick Room to allow it to move first and wipe the other team off the field before they could even get a move off. With Scarlet and Violet, this strategy only gets stronger. Torkoal was honestly hurt more by Dynamax than it was helped. Eruption requires you to be at full HP to get maximum value, and Dynamax doubling your opponent's HP stat made them much more likely to survive and damage Torkoal back. Also, because Torkoal almost always wanted to use these strong spread moves, it pretty much didn't have as much to gain from Dynamax. Terrestrialization could not be more different. Torkoal is already doing absurd damage with its fire type attacks. Using Terra Fire only makes it even more overwhelming. Throw in a Charcoal or a Choice Specs, and even Pokemon that resist fire will find themselves eviscerated by Torkoal. Torkoal isn't a one-trick pony either, or a one-trick turtle either. It can run a defensive set with moves like Will-O-Wisp, Helping Hand, and Body Press to be a defensive sunsetter as well. I expect Torkoal to be incredibly popular early on. Our number 2 slot goes to Rotom, who is not only a cell phone, but an actual Pokemon. I am so funny. Is it cheating to have Rotom this high given it has so many forms? I don't think so, but if you want to boost my engagement by letting me know in the comments, cool with me. Rotom is an electric dual type Pokemon whose appearance and secondary type changes based on which appliance it's put into. Imagine saying that exact sentence to someone who's never played Pokemon and then showing them Rotom Frost. Rotom is a flexible Pokemon whose good bulk and move pool make it really easy to slot onto teams when the power level of the format is lower. Typically, the Rotoms are ranked best to worst as Wash, Heat, Cut, Freeze, Fan, and then Naked. Rotom is this high because it's just so versatile. To start, almost all of the Rotoms have amazing defensive typing. An electric type with Levitate gives you all of the benefits of being electric without any of the drawbacks. Their well-rounded base stats also makes it pretty bulky, normally requiring 3 strong hits to take out. Typically, the 2 best sets are a bulky support Pokemon with Will-O-Wisp to really hinder physical attackers, or a Nasty Plot setup sweeper that uses its good bulk to buy itself time to set up. In the past, some Rotom have used Rest, Light Screen, or even Ally Switch to help support their team. And we've seen both Choice Specs and Choice Scarf Rotom perform well at times as well. Rotom is an amazing mon to use in a terrestrializing metagame, but Probably not for the reasons that you think. Most of the time, you're probably not going to want to terrestrialize your Rotom because it doesn't have the ability to overwhelm the opponent offensively or defensively. But, and this is a big but, Terra Electric Rotom has no weaknesses and gets a boost to its electric type attacks. This makes it a solid Terra option under almost all circumstances. If things go wrong early in the match and you lose your primary candidate for terrestrialization, you'll always have this as a good backup option later on. Last but certainly not least, our number 1 best returning Pokemon. Let me know in the comments what you think it is. Okay, the number 1 slot goes to Arcanine. Arcanine is an amazing Pokemon that offers so much utility and can be used on pretty much all team compositions. Arcanine is, in many ways, the perfect support Pokemon. Its primary role is to assist its team, but it can still contribute to the battle offensively thanks to its stats and move pool. Arcanine has very respectable defenses and can be a nightmare to remove if it's trained to be especially bulky. It also has very good attack and speed stats for such a defensive Pokemon. This combination of stats and ability alone would make Arcanine a good Pokemon, but its move pool is really what allows it to shine. Arcanine has so many viable roles it can fill thanks to the sheer quality and quantity of moves it can learn. Flare Blitz is a great option for doing damage. Extreme Speed can finish off low HP opponents or break the item Focus Sash. Arcanine also gets access to the move Helping Hand to support its teammates, and Will-O-Wisp to ruin physical attackers' day. If you're worried about special attackers, it learns Snarl. Arcanine is by no means forced to be defensive either. With Close Combat, Play Rough, and Wild Charge, it can easily be offensive as well. You could also go with a support set that uses special attacks rather than physical, like Overheat or Heat Wave over Flare Blitz, and Snarl over Extreme Speed. Arcanine is ranked at number 1 on my list, not because of its bonkers power, but because of its sheer usefulness and versatility. Thanks to its stats, move pool, and item depth, it will always contribute when you bring it to a battle. I will say that it doesn't make the best use out of terrestrialization, but since its primary goal is to support its teammates anyway, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Let me know what you think of this list and if there's any Pokemon you think deserved a spot on it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.